Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahawah Kodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is the brother Yatazakba with the GMS Nebraska camp. This is GMS Endeavor. And in this lesson, what I want to get into is how the slaves, or Salakia, the heathen, are going to be our slaves in the kingdom. Once we take the kingdom, we will have slaves and subjects underneath us. That's how any kingdom runs. That's how this kingdom runs. Even though we have jobs, even though it would seem as if we are free, really we are still in slavery. If we are employed, then we are slaves. But that's how any kingdom runs. You have those on top, you have those at the bottom. And when the nation of Israel, takes the kingdom, the heathen are going to serve as our slaves. First and foremost, Esau, Edom, who is the so-called white people, they are going to receive the most grueling punishment of slavery, the worst treatment for the treatment that they gave us. As the scriptures say here in Revelation 18:6, reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. And the cup which she had filled, fill to her double. As the scriptures say, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword shall be killed with the sword. So not only Esau, but all these heathen nations have had a hand in, the nation of Israel's downfall and in our captivity, and they're going to pay for, their treatment to us, for licking our wounds, so with that, we're going to go over to Revelation chapter 20, verse 4, which says, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahushua and for the word of the Most High, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither have received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Yahushua 1,000 years, right? Because there's coming a time of great testing that the elect is going to pass. In this time of great testing, the image of the beast is going to be, paramount in the earth. Esau's way of life, his philosophies is going to be pushed very heavily. The mark is going to be pushed very heavily, where majority of the inhabitants of this earth is going to have it. But the elect aren't going to bow the knee to the image of the beast, nor are they going to receive his mark. And that's going to come to a point where Esau is going to put some of the men of the Lord to death for that. But even in the face of death, the men of the Lord won't buckle. And for those who receive the victory over the beast, who receive salvation, even those who are put to death, they will be the first fruits of the kingdom. And it says that, and they lived and reigned with Yahushua 1,000 years. So there's a reward that comes with receiving the victory over these trials and tribulations and the beast. It says that they reigned with Yahushua 1,000 years. Now let's read on. It says, but the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Now, who is this speaking about here where it says the rest of the dead live not again? This is speaking about the heathen. It's not talking about literal dead people here. The rest of the dead is just speaking about the heathen. As a matter of fact, I can back that up with Baruch chapter 3, and we'll go down to verse 10. It says, how happeneth it, Israel, that thou art in thine enemy's land, that thou art waxen old in a strange country, that thou art defiled with the dead. And if I'm not mistaken, this was during the time of the Babylonian Empire, where our people were dragged into captivity underneath the Babylonians. That's what it's speaking about when we were in a strange country, that we was in an enemy's land, and being amongst them, we were defiled with them. But it describes them as the dead here, so let's go back to Revelation chapter 20, verse 5, where it says, but the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. And what this is giving a description of is the first 1,000 years of the reign of the nation of Israel. So we spoke about how Esau is going to receive the worst judgment in the kingdom, where they're going to be our slaves for 1,000 years. And at the end of those 1,000 years, they're going to be destroyed. All the Edomites are going to be done away with. They're going to be burnt up, as we read in Obadiah chapter 1, verse 18, where it talks about how the nation of Israel is going to be is going to be a flame, and Esau is going to be stubble. Esau is going to be burnt up and done away with. But at the end of those 1,000 years, during these 1,000 years, we're going to be getting the heathen together. They're going to be serving a grueling captivity, but over those 1,000 years, we are going to be teaching them our ways. They're going to be get put in line and building up our kingdom. At the end of these 1,000 years, that's when the heathen will live again. And what that means is that the heathen will receive more freedom. They'll be able to do their own thing, live amongst themselves and live life with more freedom than they would have had in those first 1,000 years. Now, they're still going to be under our rulership. They're still going to answer to us. They're still going to bring us, their offerings and still answer to us. But the after these 1,000 years are up, their captivity won't be as grueling as the first 1,000 years were. So let's go to we're going to go to Ezekiel chapter 39 verse 11, because what we have to understand is that when America is destroyed, when Esau is brought down out of power, and when the land of Israel is destroyed, the transition from the day of judgment and us taking the kingdom and us being cemented as the rulers of the world is not just going to be at the snap of a finger. There's a process of events that have to happen before everything is set how it's supposed to be. Because what we have to understand is that to get to the nation of Israel being up in rulership, we have to go through the prophecy of what? World War III, which means that there's going to be a lot of carnage that has happened on this earth. There's going to be a lot of destruction, a lot of dead bodies. And in Ezekiel chapter 39, it talks about, well, let's just grab it real fast. We're going to get Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 11. It says, "And it shall come to pass in that day that I will give unto Gog a place there of graves in Israel, the valley of the passengers on the east of the sea. And it shall stop the noses of the passengers. And there shall they bury Gog and all his multitude, and they shall call it the valley of Hamon Gog." And what this is explaining is that you're going to have all these men, Gog being Russia. You're going to have all these, dead men that went to war, and you're going to, smell all these dead bodies, and everybody is going to be in the area is going to stop their noses because of all the dead bodies that's going to be there. And so it says, "And 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying of them, that they may cleanse the land." Now, when it says the house of Israel, it's not speaking about the Israelites. We're not going to deal with no type of job like burying bodies. Let's read on. It says, "Yea, all the people of the land shall bury them, and it shall be to them a renown the day that I shall be glorified, said the Lord Yahweh." Now here's the point. "And they shall sever out men of continual employment, passing through the land, to bury with the passengers those that remain upon the face of the earth, to cleanse it. After the end of the 7 months shall they search." So these men of continual employment are going to be our slaves. They're going to be those who are, as a matter of fact, let's go over to the blue letter and get that word employment. I want to see what that says in the Hebrew. Strong's H8448, which is tamayad, and it's a continuity, perpetuity, to stretch. Let's see, continual employment, right? So basically, they're going to be our slaves forever. They're forever going to be underneath the nation of Israel, and we're going to employ them with burying these bodies. As we read on, it says, "And the passengers that pass through the land, when any seeth a man's bone, then shall he set up a sign by it, till the buriers have buried it in the valley of Hamon Gog," right? Because they're gonna have to search for all the dead bodies, clean up the rubble and bury these bodies and find where all the destruction is at. So there's a process of things that are going to have to take place as our kingdom is being built back up. Because like I mentioned, the land of Israel is going to be burnt up by the fire of the missiles as well as America. But while America will never be inhabited again, the fire from the missiles is going to serve as a cleansing agent for our land because of all the wickedness that the Edomites that are there, the Amalekites that are there, are doing today. but that fire is going to cleanse the land, and then, it's going to be built back up because we are going to inhabit that land. So let's get Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 10, which says, "And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee." Right. So, there's going to be a process of our walls having to be built up. Like I said, this isn't just going to be an instantaneous thing. And so the heathen are going to be employed with these different building projects, with these cleaning projects, with getting our kingdom together. It says, "For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee." Now this is going, now we're moving along to, further in time, after the initial, time period of, things being cleansed and things being put together. Let's read this. It says, "Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought." So our gates are going to always be open. We're not going to have nothing to worry about. And our gates are going to be open so that, the Gentiles can come in. And the Gentiles ain't going to live amongst us in our land. The Gentiles are going to have their own places where they stay. The land of Israel is going to be for the Israelites, but the Gentiles will be able to come in. That, what does it say? That the forces of the Gentiles may be brought, that their kings may be brought, and they're going to bring us, offerings and the best of their fruits and of their different, spices and, the things that they have to offer. When we get into this word here, forces, in the Hebrew, it's Strong's H2428, which is chayal. It says strength, might, efficiency, wealth, army. Strength, ability, efficiency, wealth. So not only is it speaking about, the kings, their leaders, their armies, but it's talking about their wealth, their goods as well. And as a matter of fact, let's read on. It says, "For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish. Yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted." And this is why those first 1,000 years are going to be needed before we just let the Gentiles do whatever they want to do, because initially they're not going to want to be under our rule. They're going to be subject unto us and kneel, because they're going to recognize our power and recognize that they can't fight back. But it's not like they're going to want to be under us initially. So that's why the scriptures say that, for the nations that don't serve us, then for those people who try to buck up, or for those people who don't want to serve us, or they don't want to follow after our ways, they're going to perish. The scriptures say that, we're going to stop the reign of those who are, who aren't being subservient, so that their crops don't grow, so that there's a famine in their lands. There's going to be punishments that have to go out to some of these heathen for their disobedience. But eventually, they're all going to be whipped into shape. They're all going to, be right. So let's read on. It says, "The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, and the box together to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious." Right. So they're bringing the best of their trees, the best of their resources, so that our kingdom may be brought up. It says, "The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, and they shall call thee the city of the Lord, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel." It says, "Whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellency of joy of many generations." And this is beautiful. While we're at the bottom here now, where all these different nations look at us and they see us as scum, and like I mentioned, they're licking our wounds in this kingdom. They're setting up their stores in the hoods and taking advantage of Jake. Well, in the kingdom, we're going to be on top. They're going to be looking up at us. It says, "Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shall suck the breast of kings. And thou shalt know that I, the Lord Yahweh, am thy Savior and the Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob." And what this is speaking about is how, we're basically gonna feed off their, I won't say feed off of their resources, but they're gonna bring us of the best of their resources. You know, the Gentiles are going to be able to live off of, what they make, but they're going to bring us their best. So let's go to Isaiah chapter 61, and we're going to go down to verse 4. It says, "And they shall build up the old wastes," or let's go to verse 5. It says, "And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the alien shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers." Right? So that's what I was speaking about before. There's going to be certain things that Israelites ain't going to be doing. We're going to be royalty. We're going to be kings, and princes and princesses, so there's not going to be no Israelites out in the field, out in the sun working. That's going to be the jobs that heathen are doing, and they're going to be feeding our animals, making sure these different tasks are done. It says, "But ye shall be named the priests of the Lord. Men shall call you the ministers of our power. Ye shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in their glory shall ye boast yourselves." Right? And why are we going to be called priests of the Lord? Why are we going to be called ministers? Because we are going to teach these nations, how to keep the law. Because what we have to remember is that when we are in the kingdom, what are we under? The second covenant. So, and when we are in the second covenant, we're going to keep the law, statutes, and commandments in perfection, because righteousness is going to be written in our inward parts. But these heathen, all they know is the way that they know. They're not going to be in new bodies in the kingdom. Only the Israelites are. So we're going to have to teach them the proper way. And so we are going to be priests and ministers teaching these heathen the way. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 2, and this will be the last precept we grab. It says, "And it shall come to," Isaiah chapter 2, verse 2, "And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the power of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." So there's not going to be no heathen, eating abominable foods. There's not going to be no heathen, following their laws and, serving their own gods. No, all the heathen are going to be serving Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. All the heathen are going to be following our laws, our statutes, our commandments. They're going to be following after the ways of the Most High. And it says, "And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." So, once we're in our kingdom, it's going to be peace. There's going to be no more, no nations trying to rise up and, rise up against the nation of Israel. Nah, we're going to be on top. These nations is going to sit their ass down. They're going to listen to what we tell them. They're going to serve us, and eventually any thought of the nations not wanting to be under our rule or wanting to buck up is going to be gone, because they're going to realize how beautiful the rulership of the nation of Israel is. Because as the scriptures say, Proverbs 29:2, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bear to rule, the people mourn. This is why you see the different heathen in the earth trying to, submit their place as the top dogs. That's why, you have war amongst the different kings of the earth. But once the kingdom is established, once our kingdom is established, they're going to realize that the nation of Israel being on top is the best thing. And so that's why it says, what's like it? No. I was about to read that wrong. But, hey, we can grab Proverbs 29:2 and end it on that. "When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn." So at first, these heathen are going to be forced to follow after us, forced to keep our ways. But eventually, they're going to want to follow us. They're going to want to keep our ways, because they're going to realize that the nation of Israel being on top, the ways of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, and righteousness being perpetuated in the earth is the best thing for everybody. So Lord's will, this lesson was edifying. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai Bahar Chakudash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, and a salutation unto the elect.